OMG, baby, tell him.
All right, we are live on Facebook. It's Justin. I'm here. It's Powered by Backers. I have an amazing guest today, Jeniffer Botterill. Thank you very much for joining me on Powered by Backers. Sorry, I'm supposed to let you answer there, right?
All good, all good. No, nice to connect with you.
Yes, thank you. So I'll give a quick background. I don't want to go too much. Obviously, there's a million things I could probably say, but I'll quickly. So you're a 3-time gold medalist, Canadian women's hockey player at the Olympics, plus a silver, I believe, right?
That's
so
right.
4-time participant, 5-time world champion, Harvard grad. So you played hockey at Harvard. You were the Beanpot. You were awarded or inducted into the Beanpot Hall of Fame in 2008. As well, you're a sports broadcaster extraordinaire. So what you do obviously puts what I'm doing here to shame, but we're trying. You're an ambassador, athlete ambassador. I think this is kind of cool to Right to Play, which is kind of interesting. You just mentioned there, I didn't know this, but you have 3 young kids, and you're enjoying the quarantine or the life at home. And we'll get into that. Is there anything that I missed that you'd like to add to that?
Thanks.
You do play-by-play for the Islanders, or not play-by-play, but in game. So that's amazing. So welcome to Powered by Backers. Thank you. Ask the experts.
Oh, great. Well, it's nice to be here. So Thank you for the nice introduction.
Thank you. So I'll jump right into it. I'm gonna no holds barred. No, just kidding. If you had one food that you could eat for the rest of your life, obviously we're all stuck in quarantine, so we're probably eating Kraft dinner over and over and over again. At least that's what we're doing here. What would that one food be? Kind of start off on that.
Well, it's too funny that you ask because I'm probably going to say pancakes. Just made the kids pancakes before the call. Throwing a little chocolate chips there. But we are learning as well. My husband's Italian, so we're also trying to pick up our cooking game. So learning how to make a few things from scratch. So making some pizza, some homemade meatballs and sauce. So we're trying to, I have had some improvements to keep up to my mother-in-law and my mom. So we've been trying to learn a few new skills.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you've got to do what you got to do, right? I love blueberry pancakes. If I had to throw in a type of pancake, that's my pick.
I love those too. Yes.
Perfect. So I want to get into your story, sort of a little bit, but I had one other quick question I want to ask. Who would you say is the toughest player you've ever played against?
You know
another trick question.
No, not at all. I mean, probably from the U.S. team, Angela Ruggiero. She was a defenseman for Team USA, and we were also teammates at Harvard University. So we played together, but she was a very fierce, very tough opponent, physically super strong and really skilled. So she's probably one of the toughest players I've played against.
Right. So kind of like a friendly rivalry, right? Teammates and then foes, right? On the
we sort of called it the positive rivalry, right? Where you got to know them as friends, but it helped us all get better.
Frenemy.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so I guess I'll ask you, get into your story. Tell us a little bit about, I've watched a few videos. I heard you talk a little bit on a couple things. Obviously passion is important. I think one of the things that I picked out, and I actually use this a lot, is why not you? Why not me? Why can't I? Kind of that concept. So tell us a little bit about your story. Where you came from, what brought you to, play in the Olympics, and sort of what brought you to where you are today, after you've retired from hockey.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, that has been a philosophy that's been really important for me in my career. And it all started with a conversation with my parents when I was 15. And they asked me, what my ultimate dream was or what my ultimate goal was.
Right.
And it was to play in the Olympics. I've been that kid. I watched it on television when I was young. And I thought, I'd love to be there one day. And it was that conversation where they told me that day, they said, well, why not you? If somebody else can be there, then why can't it be you?
Right.
So that's certainly shifted my perspective. And if you look at, I guess, my path in my life, that was very influential for my making sort of the Olympics a reality for me, in terms of pushing towards that, in terms of applying to Harvard University, in terms of my career path since then, in terms of getting involved in broadcasting or standing between the benches to cover NHL action, or, doing keynote speaking in front of thousands of people. I mean, those were all sort of elements of my life that I feel very fortunate to have been a part of. And I think that was a philosophy that has really guided me along the way, in terms of making sure you set your standards high enough.
Right.
And it's also been approached, I wanted to pursue excellence in every aspect of my life, as an athlete, as a professional, as a mother, as a person. And I think that's been something that's been helpful in terms of guiding me along the way of the path.
Awesome. Yeah, reach for the stars and set your sights high, right?
I think it's hugely important.
Yeah.
I know for me, the 1 year before the 98 Olympics was the first year I made the team. I did not make the national junior team for Canada. So I wasn't one of the top players for under 18. Then 1 year later, at 18 years old, I made the senior national team.
Wow.
So I think it's an example where we always have a choice to make. It's sometimes the path isn't always super easy or super smooth, but it's making that choice to say, okay, well, I have a lot to learn in the next year or a lot of improvement to make. So I think resiliency is also an important piece of that.
Yeah, it's those bumps in the road that make you who you are today, right?
Yes.
Jordan was cut from his grade 9 basketball team, right? So that's one story. I wore my Canada red just for the interview,
Nice.
And I figured
Year.
I figured it's anyways, it's from Wooden Sticks. It's I put it on because I was having the talk with you. So
Very nice.
We'll get into that. So the Olympics. So you participated in 4 Olympics. You just mentioned 98 was the first year. 2010, I guess, would have been the last year, sort of.
Yes, I retired after 2010. Yes.
And that was, you won 3 golds and 1 silver. The silver was the 98, right? And then you won 3 consecutive golds, right? So tell us a little bit about that experience. I mean, obviously, I've never been in the Olympics. I was, if even a has-been, probably never was a hockey player or athlete for that matter. So tell us what it's like to kind of be in the Olympics and to prep for the Olympics. And is that sort of the pinnacle, or, we'll get into other questions around that. But yeah, tell us about the Olympics.
Yeah, the Olympics, every Olympics was very special, super unique.
Right.
And as, I think you sort of could describe it as peak performance. And, you have experience with that in terms of, the business capacity on how you want to be a peak performer in that field.
Right.
So attending the Olympic Games, there's nothing quite like it in terms of the energy and the excitement, in terms of the global interest.
Right.
And as a high performer, you also have to make sure that you prepare to perform in those situations, knowing that there's so much excitement. There's also a lot of potential distractions. But I also know, I think about one of my highlights for my entire career, had to be
that was going to be one of my questions, actually. So I'll ask the question, what's your most favorite moment and your worst moment, if you wanted to?
Right. Let's start maybe the most challenging moment then was likely when we won the silver medal, right, in 98. Our goal was to get the gold medal. And, anything less than that was a disappointment. So that was something for us that we decided to use as motivation for the next few Olympics.
Of course. You then won 3 in a row, right? So
yes. Yeah. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges because, we felt like we let down the country at that point. But if you look at the highlight on the other side of things, it had to be that gold medal game in Vancouver in 2010.
2010, yeah.
I think we went into those Olympics thinking it would be pretty special. But the energy and the excitement, the atmosphere was far better than we could have imagined. And still to this day, when I look at pictures or videos from that gold medal game in 2010, I get chills. The atmosphere, the crowd was incredible. And I think as athletes, when we were talking about high performance, we were intense and we were competitive. But I feel like we had a bit of that smile on our faces, right? To say this is exactly where you want to be, where what you train for as an elite athlete.
Right.
And so for us to be in that moment and have the chance to perform well, I look back and I think we all sort of chose to just embrace that, to be competitive, but also to make sure that we were enjoying the moments along the way.
Yeah. Obviously, so when you look back on it, so you mentioned sort of those are the 2 sort of points of your career, right? The low and say the high, right? And it's almost, that was sort of the bookends, right? The beginning and sort of the end. So talk, I guess, I saw you also talk a little bit about retiring from hockey. So I'd love to sort of hear your thoughts on, obviously you reached, the ultimate, you played professionally in the CWHL, you obviously played in multiple Olympics. what was it like sort of to retire and then I guess transition, and what made you choose broadcasting, right? I think you have a degree in psychology, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what made you choose broadcasting versus sports psychology? I don't know, or whatever else, the other direction that might have gone that way. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, I loved playing. I loved my time as an elite athlete, but I loved, being a competitive athlete was, really a huge thrill and a dream come true. And then as I approached sort of that last Olympic year, I thought, this may be my last Olympics. And I started to think about things I'd love to get involved with. Okay. And for me, taking the broadcasting degree at Harvard, the psychology degree, was something that I thought was applicable to so many different aspects of my life. Right. And I grew up, my dad worked in the field of sports psychology and performance psychology. So I was fortunate to be in that environment growing up.
I did not know that. I took psych as a minor and sports psych, so I just threw it out there, but yeah.
And I do think it's a field, it's not just sports psychology now. It seems like it's performance psychology. You apply to sport or business or health or, the entire sort of world. And so for me, I've been able to find a nice balance of broadcasting and covering the sport. And I also do a lot of keynote speaking. And that's where I draw on a lot of my experience from psychology, from sports psychology, and I do some consulting work as well. And so for me, it's bringing in those messages and having the chance to help people along with covering the sport. So it's been, I think, a nice balance for me to hopefully share lessons and help people reach their peak potential and covering the sport and hopefully making it even entertaining and, making people feel even more connected to the athletes and to the sport and to the moments that are happening in the games. So I feel very fortunate. I've enjoyed the new phase. Post-competitive athlete.
Right. And so what would you say, I mean, I've worked sort of in the sports realm. How I started Backers was I had a 3-on-3 professional hockey league that I had started. Not sure if you're familiar with it, the 3HL.
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay, that's cool.
Congratulations.
It's sort of on hold. We were trying to fund it, and that's actually how I started Backers and the platform for Backers. We were trying to figure out how to fund the teams, saw the community-owned team sort of concept in Green Bay, and decided we would sort of pursue that. So that's kind of how the Backers platform started, and then we'll go back and we'll fund the teams in the 3HL. So being a broadcaster, we've worked with some. What would be some tips that you would say to broadcasters and to people maybe who are, because in today's world, a lot of people are probably looking at transitioning. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of, maybe they've lost a job. The world is kind of in flux, if you will. I don't know if that's, what advice would you give to somebody who's in that position? So obviously you were in one position, playing, as an elite athlete, and then you were sort of not forced to, but, obviously as life moves on, you had to change gears. What sort of advice would you give to somebody who's in sort of that position and maybe looking at a different career path, whether it's entrepreneurship or just a different career path? What kind of advice would you give to someone like that?
I think it's important to make sure that you set standards and goals for yourself along the way. And I think in the internal confidence and the belief is very important as well. And I think we touched on that at the very start about having those goals high enough for yourself. Right. And if I look at my transition into broadcasting, and even over the last couple of years in terms of the work with the Islanders, it was something, I'd only been between the benches to cover men's hockey at the Olympics before. But sort of diving in and saying, well, sometimes you have to push your comfort zone, right? To get different results or better results, you have to do things that you've never done before. And it's important to remember the path isn't always super smooth, right? And I think it's adjusting to change along the way. And sometimes the path is different than we initially expect it to be. And when I draw back on that experience of when I was 17 and not making the junior team, that's not what I envisioned for my path of hopefully making the Olympics one day. But how do you adjust and set new standards? And that was something for me in terms of transitioning from hockey. Did I miss the adrenaline and the excitement and the energy of playing and competing every day? Absolutely. But it was finding that in new areas of my life in terms of, standing in front of people to deliver a keynote session. How do you do one-on-one coaching to feel a sense of, reward and what makes, every day feel meaningful for you? So, advice would be, be resilient, set high standards for yourself and make sure that you adapt to those changes along the way. And sometimes you just have to push your comfort zones. And the future can be really exciting if you have that confidence in yourself.
Right. Take the little steps every day and try new things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to you just mentioned coaching. I didn't know about the one-on-one coaching. One of the questions I had was, who is the toughest coach you ever had, and sort of why, and maybe who was your favorite coach? And they could be the same person. I don't know, but maybe they're not. Maybe it depends. But who would be sort of the toughest coach you ever had, or sort of, yeah, go ahead.
That's interesting, because I feel like I look back, I feel pretty fortunate for the coaching that I had throughout my career. I even look back to youth coaches, that sort of,
Right.
were positive and supportive, but still demanding. And I look back and I feel very thankful, because I think I learned a lot, even in my teenage years, in terms of playing elite sport with different teams that we played on. So, I look back, I think I learned a lot from my coach at Harvard University. Coach Katie Stone was very influential.
Okay.
And, look at Team Canada. Danielle Sauvageau was our coach in 2002. And she was really, I think, had great vision. So she was demanding and sort of set some new standards for us in terms of the demands of our training schedules, in terms of playing against male hockey teams to get better in terms of playing at a high level. So I think that if I look back from Olympic coaches to youth coaches to Harvard University, I think I was fortunate to have a variety of coaches, and,
right.
They all had different approaches, but found a way to get the most out of individuals. I think that was something I learned in terms of leadership skills,
right.
that it takes time to get to know your team and your group. And every person might need something a little bit different,
right.
to be at their best or to perform at their best consistently.
Right. So it's the whole is greater than the pieces individually, kind of thing, right?
Yes. And every person's unique, right? On what they might need to be at their best. Exactly. So I had a lot of respect for that.
Cool. I'm going to completely flip this around for a second.
Sure.
If that's okay. So I saw that you tried out in the women's junior basketball, like Canadian women's junior basketball team.
Yes.
So question is, what position? And if are you a 3-point shooter or a dunker, or what's your, can you dunk?
I know that would not be in my,
No?
I'm a hockey
Okay.
player. I didn't have as much
hops
as
okay.
or, I didn't have quite as much height. So I was more of a guard. I didn't play down low in the post for my basketball days, but there was one point where you've got
some height.
Yes, but in basketball terms, not as much. So still in the guard position in basketball. But there was at one point when I was deciding what sport I wanted to compete in. And I loved playing basketball. And I know that my parents had taken both my older brother Jason and I to different schools in the States to look around to see if we were intrigued to go there for university. And at one point I was sort of deciding between basketball and hockey. But as the Olympics were drawing closer for hockey, I think my vision became more clear that I loved both sports. I think both were great for my development. Yeah. But hockey quickly became, my ultimate.
Do you still play
favorite.
basketball? Can you still take the kids outside?
We do actually. There's a couple of we have a couple basketball courts in our neighborhood that people love, and we've got them outside in the backyard too. With this new phase, we've sort of set up this diverse sports terrain in our backyard. So we've got a little tennis net, we've got the hockey net, we've got the basketball nets back there. So depending on the day, we've got lots of sports to play.
Perfect. And that sort of segues into my next question. Growing up in Canada, obviously hockey is sort of king. I played both hockey and lacrosse, played as a questionable word, but anyways, I was there. Would you say to young athletes, sort of go back, even though our audience is primarily entrepreneurs and businessmen, maybe their kids, this is maybe geared towards their kids and how they parent. Would you say that multiple sports is a good thing to do? Because nowadays I notice, obviously being with the 3HL, we notice a lot of kids and stuff, they're playing 12 months of hockey, all year, and they never really get an opportunity, like you said, to try different things out and get different skills. And obviously they complement one another. What are your thoughts on sort of multiple sports versus the hockey is life, 12 months of the year?
Yes, I definitely support the balance of different sports. I think that's important. I know it's certainly tough for many kids because they want to make sure they're on top of their game for the sport that they're involved with. But I think I've seen some real benefits for the balance. And I think it's so important to develop as an overall athlete, and you get that from different sports. And you can have sort of the sport that might be your favorite, but I think there's still a real value of integrating some balance and variety so that when you get back to your favorite sport, you're still excited about it, and you have the draw, and there's not really as much burnout potential. So I think there's real value for youth to have a bit of variety. And I know there's sort of pressure to make sure that you're improving in every aspect, but I do think it's super important to have that balance. And we also, I run a high performance center as well, and our whole philosophy is to make sure they take a break to come back even stronger. So I think that's been something we've integrated with our training and encouragement and plans for all of our athletes and clients to make sure that, okay, you're having that time, you come back and you're stronger and refreshed for sort of that long-term potential to excel wherever your path takes you.
Cool. I agree 100%. So I'll end it with one last question. It's kind of the question. It's kind of a two-part question, actually. So I'll take that back. There's two questions. One is, what are your thoughts on sort of what's happening in the world? What are your sort of plans? And where do you see all of this, or how do you see all of this kind of playing out with COVID and coronavirus? Just sort of quick thoughts. I'm not asking you to be political or one way or the other, but just what are your thoughts? Like, what are you kind of doing to prepare, and what are you planning for?
Yes. Well, I think as many of us we're planning for a lot of different possibilities.
Right.
And it's something where I think it puts our lives and our health in perspective for all of us to make sure that we, feel thankful for what we have and the time and the experiences that we have. And, as a mom, I'm also trying to make sure that I'm here and enjoying time with my kids and my family. As a professional, it's also taking some time where to also have a lot of different plans in terms of when, speaking events are happening again, in terms of people meeting, or if, it's the shift to a lot of online interaction for consulting and speaking. Exactly. Right. Or on the hockey side of things, in terms of covering the action, same thing, keeping myself educated on potential plans for the future. So I think many of us can't predict exactly what the future holds in terms of the time frame. But I think I've always been a planner and tried to make sure that I have different options that I feel prepared for and that I feel as educated as possible. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I'm trying to make sure that I am present and enjoying this, and positioned to make sure I make the most of opportunities down the road, but also enjoy some time with the kids and the family while we have that now.
Cool. Just a side note, any insider information on what the NHL is planning on doing, being that you have some connection to the Islanders there? Or?
Well, we've had some chats, but there's no final. I think that all of us have sort of only get the information. We know there's meetings taking places. There's some different options. I think they're keen to have some sort of conclusion to this season. I think it's obviously going to look different than it has in the past, but it's nice to hear that they're exploring lots of options, and I'm sure the players would love to get back into it and find an avenue to have a great product and also entertain the fans as well. Yeah,
definitely. And I guess the final question, which I sort of ask everyone, is if there was one piece of advice that you could give to, a younger you, or, a younger person who, or it doesn't have to be younger, just a person who is looking to pursue their dreams or passion, whether it's be an athlete or an entrepreneur, or in their, whatever their chosen endeavor is, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, I think we'll come full circle, and it would be the advice of why not you? That, if someone could be there or accomplishing that, I think it's why not you? And then the second part of it would probably be to just have your own confidence. If I look back early in my career, I think it's relying less on other people's confidence and finding that within yourself. So I think with those sort of two approaches, some pretty exciting potentials are possible. Awesome.
I really, 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 really appreciate you joining me today, Jennifer.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Stay safe. To all of you out there, again, join me tomorrow on Powered by Backers. Thank you again, Jennifer, and have yourselves a great day.
Okay. Thanks, Justin. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah.